everybody, and welcome to my April wrap up. I read 17 books somehow last month, and I'm going to be talking through all of them. I will also be doing a little bit of journaling because I know you guys love to see my journal. I think I'm going to incorporate some flip through moments as well, just to show off some of the spreads and talk through some of the events that I did this month as well. So it'll just be like an overall monthly wrap up, and we'll take like an intermission halfway through talking about the 17 books that I read to do the journal setup, and then we'll return to, finishing up and speaking through the massive stack of books that I ended up reading. Somehow, once again, I don't know how that happened, but I am certainly not complaining. I'm going to go ahead and start off straight away talking about two installments in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, because the first book that I read this month was The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, and I also shortly thereafter finished This Inevitable Ruin. One of these was a hit, one of them was a miss, and unfortunately for me, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride was not my favorite. I had actually been in the middle of this book since August or September of last year, and just stopped reading the Carl series. I literally binged so many volumes and then just hit the wall and then didn't return to it until this month because the next book is coming out in May and I want to be on top of it. So I decided to finally pick it back up and finish it. I had a lot of problems with this book, mostly because the level that this dungeon takes place on replicates Earth. It's like a 1-to-1 to Earth. It's almost the ghost of Earth's past 3 days before the massive collapse that had everyone going into the dungeon. Think Mario Kart when you're like racing yourself and there's like the ghost cart. That's pretty much what this level was with like all of Earth. And let me briefly actually talk about what the Carl series is about before I dive into the details. So we follow Carl and his cat Donut on these adventures through the dungeon. It's like an intergalactic game show that all of these people on Earth were forced to participate in against their will because these aliens came and basically invaded, and hence the dungeon crawl began. About 75% of this book I found to be quite boring, and that was probably like the first 75%, because not only were we on, in my opinion, a kind of boring level with it just being like a duplicate of Earth, but also the fighting system was a little different than just like Carl beating stuff up. He instead had to use like decks of cards and think like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon. I guess not Pokemon, but Yu-Gi-Oh! For some reason is like the first card game that comes to mind, where you kind of like summon cards, your creature appears, and then they like fight on your behalf. So that's kind of the situation that was occurring. I think if this was like an animated show or a manga, this would be really, really interesting. But for me personally, I felt like it took away from getting more of the characters' interactions, because then we had all of these like side characters of the cards themselves that, again, we knew we didn't really have to care about that much because we weren't going to see them come the next level. I ended up giving it 3 stars. The ending brought it back for me a little bit. I really liked the climax and like the peak of the story, and especially as we started to set up for the next level as well. I thought it was really well done, and the end of Dungeon Crawler Carl books tend to be very like action-packed, like so many things are going on, so I always love the end of the book, but the first 75% was just a little tricky to get through. However, for This Inevitable Ruin, I gave it a 4.75. It was phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed it, and we finally get to an event that we have been building up to literally since the first book, and it is the faction wars. So we have all these different groups in the dungeon, and they are all fighting against one another, and Carl kind of upped the stakes a little bit in this book, so things got a little bit more juicy than I think we ever could have imagined in book 1 when it was first mentioned. I love how most everything went in this book. There's a few pieces that I wasn't thrilled with the direction it went. However, overall, I was pretty satisfied. I really liked the war aspect of it, and Carl stepping up to kind of be a leader, but at the same time, the rest of his team being like, dude, you don't have to control all of us. Like, we've also been in the dungeon all of this time and know how some things work, so we can also plan. We got a lot more of the outside dungeon politics, as well as characters that we've briefly heard of, but we actually got to interact with as well. So it was a really solid, fun time, as the Carl series tends to be. I love listening to the audiobooks as well, so that definitely lends to my enjoyment of the series. Jeff Hayes is such a talented narrator, doing all the voices himself, and I can't imagine reading it any other way. Pretty content on being back in the Carl universe this month, and I can't wait to pick up a Parade of Horribles next month. I have already been told off for picking up the Live Ship Trader series before finishing the Farseer trilogy, and honestly, I understand your frustrations. However, I don't really care. I may return to the Farseer trilogy. I just didn't love Assassin's Apprentice, but I fear I may need to do a little bit of a reread to dive fully into the realm of the Elderlings series. It's like a massive series of multiple series. It's a massive series of multiple series. I swear that makes sense. It's a big series, and then there's like groups of trilogies splitting up each series. And this one is the Lifeship Trader series. In this book, we have talking boats, which quite frankly is all I need to tell you about it because I gave it a 4.5. It was a phenomenal, phenomenal time. Now, I think the low rating came from the fact that I read half of it last month and then waited many weeks before finishing it. So the pacing felt off to me, but I think it was just a me problem with how I read it. So don't get me wrong, absolutely love and ate up this book. However, it just wasn't quite on par with the 5-star that I gave to Ship of Magic. We are following quite the cast of characters from a pirate named Kenneth, who is determined to become king of the pirates and is a very manipulative and sneaky character that I've really enjoyed getting to delve more into. His character is so fascinating. You're not really supposed to like him, I feel like. Yeah, he's making these decisions that feel good and feel right. At the same time, his motivations behind the decisions never feel like they're good. We also have Athea, who was supposed to inherit her family's life ship, aka like the talking ships. However, things didn't quite go to plan, and she is trying to prove herself. We also have Wintro, who is basically a character that cannot catch a break throughout this entire series, and I feel for this boy so much. Nothing in his life is going his way. Nothing in his life is going to plan. And his character has taken a turn, such an interesting turn, because of the characters that he is around. It really is shaping him as a person, and it's fascinating to see because the situation he was put in his entire life has been so unfair, and yet the path he's chosen to go on, again, unwillingly, has led to, I feel like, the most character development that we've really got from him, and it's so fascinating to read from. I love the characters so much. I love the magic and the world building. We really are getting some very interesting character development from all the characters, even Malta, who is such a brat, and yet her character is taking these paths and making these choices that are just so unexpected, and it really makes this book one that I cannot predict where it's going. And I haven't picked up the third book yet because I'm so nervous, you guys, and I'm not ready for the Lifeship Trader series to come to an end, but hopefully in May I will be picking it up. I'm so nervous, you guys. The Favorites by Lainey Fargo was one that has been constantly compared to Daisy Jones and the Six, and I, being a huge fan of Taylor Jenkins Reid, had to pick this up, as well as the fact that my gymnastics has this little book club that we formed, and this was the book choice for April, and honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. I ended up giving it a 4.25. I flew through this book. It is the most juicy, drama-filled book that I've read in a while, and I definitely understand why people compare it to TJR as well. In The Favorites, we are following these two figure skaters and their journey from childhood to becoming elite Olympian athletes. And there's so much drama interwoven within their story. Their romance as well is very, very drama-filled. It is so fast-paced. So many things happen. The only major complaint that I have is the ending. I feel like things got a little messy and weird in my opinion. It just felt like a weird place to leave off where our characters ended up. But I loved the backstabbing, the juicy drama. All of it was just so fun and entertaining to read about. Granted, it did sober me up occasionally when I realized that certain things in this book happen to real life figure skaters, or at least some of the drama paralleled that, because I feel like every sport organization has corruption within it, which is so unfortunate because why is it ever so serious when it comes to sports? I will never ever understand, truly. However, reading about it in the form of fiction was, like I said, drama-filled, fast-paced, and a very fun time. I've heard good things about the audiobook. I personally did not pick up the audiobook. I did read the physical format, but in between each chapters, there's interviews with past teammates, past coaches, as well as family members and such. So I think that's why people like the audiobook so much, is maybe it has a cast of characters. But I found just picking up the book physically also was a fun time. Another sports romance book that I picked up was Head Over Heels. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. It was actually trash, quite frankly. We follow 2 coaches, Avery and Ryan. Avery recently got dumped by her boyfriend. She was an Olympic hopeful and got injured during the Olympic trials. So her life did not take a direction that she thought it would take. And then after getting dumped, she ends up moving back home where she is reconnected with Ryan, who is currently coaching Hallie, who's an Olympic hopeful. Ryan takes on Avery, and together they are training Hallie, and there's romance. However, seeing how this book is a romance, it certainly missed the mark on writing and creating a good romance between these characters. They felt so childish, especially because they were 27. I'm like, okay, the decisions that you are making and the actions you are taking do not coincide with the supposed maturity of two 27-year-olds who have, lived quite a bit of life. They've had past relationships as well, and yet it was so painful to read. Luckily, I had just borrowed it off of Libby, so I wasn't too bent out of shape about picking this book up. However, it was just not a good time. I was especially annoyed because there's not that many like gymnastics books out there, and I do gymnastics and I love reading books that are like tailored towards my niche interests and hobbies. So I was really hoping that there would be more gymnastic books. Like, how is there more Formula One books? And Formula One only really got popular within the last few years compared to gymnastics books, when gymnastics has been such a prevalent part, especially in America and with the Olympics in our society. I'm like, how have we not hopped on this gymnastics trend? Although, I can't say the quality of F1 books that I've read have been necessarily great either, so maybe it's for the best that people are staying away from the gymnastics books. I'm going to talk about one more book, and then I will take an intermission to do some journaling, catch up in my journal a little bit, and maybe chat a little bit in the voiceover, or maybe I'll just let you enjoy watching me put my journal together. Not quite sure what the plan is. I guess we will see, but the last book I'll talk about before that intermission is Anne of Avonlea. This is the second book in the Anne of Green Gables series. I was not expecting to read this book this month. However, I was filming a readathon and the fancy kind of struck me and I wanted to pick this up, and I was so thrilled that I did because it was perfect. It was such a wonderful book to read in the spring. I gave it a solid 4 stars, and in this book we are following Anne as she embarks on being a teacher. Anne has such a delightful relationship with the children that she teaches, and I love how passionate she is about her kids. And while Anne does spend a lot of time with the kids that she teaches at school, we still get her interacting with Diana, her best friend, and they still have their youthful, mischievous ways about them, which is so fun because it shows that even though we have to grow up, we don't always have to lose our childlike spark, and Anne captures that essence perfectly. We add to our cast of characters that we get to hang around in Avonlea, and it was just so delightful to meet all of them and to fall in love with each and every single one of them. So I cannot wait to continue on the Anne series. It has just been a delightful time to read a book that has so many life lessons that even though it is a children's book, there's so much that you can take away from the story, and it makes me want to live more like Anne and find more joy in the little things and to be more appreciative of the little things as well. All right, let's do a little bit of journaling. Now, typically I would set up for the next month like a reset moment. However, the way I've been doing my journal lately is I actually don't make my cover page until the end of the month after all my reading has been complete. And for some reason, it's working for me. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my cover page for April, and then I'll do a little flip through of all the pages that I created for April and talk through each one as well as some of the events that I did. Enjoy the bits of journaling, and I will see you back in a few. has a couple big highlights for this month, and one of them being that I got to be an exhibitor at WeebCon in the Artist Alley. This was in Texas, so my family actually was able to come out and support me and see me in action. I had a couple of my friends stop by to support as well, and I'm just really loving this journey that I'm on with my business, Oakleaf Arrow Studios. And in case you don't know, I'm actually a fantasy cartographer, so I draw a lot of maps, and I love my job so much. Another highlight was the NAIGC Nationals in Birmingham, Alabama. I do gymnastics with my adult team, and a few of us went to Birmingham for nationals, and somehow I ended up as the vault champion, the bars champion, and the floor champion, and I didn't even know until 2 days prior that they were prelims and finals. So still very confused on how that happened, but I had such a delightful time with my friends competing and made a bunch of friends at the competition as well, and it's been so fulfilling to return to gymnastics a decade later and just have a delightful time with people that I love so much. I also did a 24-hour readathon, which you'll see a vlog very, very soon for. I had a delightful weekend full of reading, and I wanted to make a page to commemorate that. I'm also embarking on a Granny Square blanket. I started it a few months ago, and I haven't touched it since, so I needed a method that gave me extra dopamine hits, and I thought filling out squares in my journal would do that for me. And the last page I'm showing you is for Yona of the Dawn. I wanted to make a page commemorating one of my favorite arcs so far in the series, but I'll go ahead and cut back to me actually talking about the books to delve deeper into that. Seeing how I had an entire page dedicated to Yona, I fear I must, of course, show off all of the Yona books that I read this month. We read volumes 11 through 17, and all 7 of these were a delightful time in their different ways. But as you saw from that last page in my journal, 14, 15, and 16 were my favorite in all of the arc. This was the Water Tribe arc, and I just ate this up. There was some mystery elements. We got a lot of good interactions between all the characters. We had a big standoff between 2 of our main characters as well, and all of it was so good. I was literally punching a pillow in frustration and yet having the best time ever. I seriously have been loving reading through Yona, and I'm so happy that I managed to find my momentum again because I want to do nothing but read Yona, but the library is not giving me the holds that I put in, and it's making me sad. This may have been a lesson about greed because I did request like 20 volumes at one time, and maybe I should have done like 5. And maybe they would have been in by now, but it's fine. Everything is fine, guys. I love Yona. Every single one of these got a 5-star. Another manga I have been utterly obsessed with is Gashi Akita, and I picked up volume 2. Honestly, if I didn't just buy an unbelievable amount of Yona volumes, I probably would have bought the rest of the Gashi Akita series and also binged it in one go because this is such a fun book. I love the cast of characters and I love the art style. The art style is really what sold this series for me. I am just so obsessed with it. It has like a darker feel to it, very like scratchy, heavy line work, and it is phenomenal. It makes me want to be able to draw people, but I simply cannot draw people. I do not have that talent. We follow Rudo, who gets thrown into a trash pit after being accused of murder, but down at the bottom there's like a whole society of people, and there's some magic, there's some monsters, and we are slowly getting to meet the group that defeat these monsters and kind of protect these different towns. In this book, we also meet my favorite character, which is Rio. She has such a cool character design. She really is the most stereotypical, like, cool girl design ever. Like, she just imbues that coolness, and I love it. So much action, a little bit more of the plot of Rudo joining this group called the Cleaners, who are the ones who defeat the trash beasts, and he's kind of using them for information, yet at the same time, he's kind of learning that, like, oh, there's like a give and take to how this works, and in order to get information, I'm going to have to be willing to do something for them as well. So very, very fun, very fast-paced, action-filled, and we left off a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I've already seen the anime, well, half the anime, so I kind of know what's going on. However, reading it in manga format has been so good. I did give it 5 stars, unsurprisingly. I tend to give a lot of manga 5 stars because if I enjoyed it, it's like a 5-star. However, if I didn't enjoy it, gave it a 3-star. This is Kamuro, which I feel like we got played so hard because this cover is gorgeous. I love the dragons, I love the colors, I love the character design, so cool. That's not what is inside this book. And I was so let down and so annoyed. We follow Kamuna, who is born into a tribe of dragons. He is a human boy with a dragon arm and tail, and everyone else in this tribe is dragons. He's wanting to become a strong warrior like all the other dragons. He's just obviously like not built the same. And it's about him kind of like fitting in, finding his path, and finding his place as well. But we took so long to actually like get to the meat of the story that by time we finally got to see Kamuna in action and see him during the time period that we're following him, the book was over. Because there was so much setup with Kamuna as a boy. Well, Kamuna in an egg, Kamuna as a boy, and then a few chapters of him just like growing up to get to the point where he's at starting this training. And I found it kind of boring, but that also could be because I don't love the art style. Honestly, with manga, I have to like the art style to enjoy the story. I don't care how strong the story is. If I'm bored looking at the pictures, which is the core of a manga, then I'm not gonna really enjoy it. So I did end up giving it 3 stars. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more this is leaning towards like a 2.75. So I'm gonna go ahead and mentally change my rating to a 2.75 for this one. I was just disappointed. I think there are people that will enjoy the art style, but before you pick it up, I definitely recommend at least peeking in and seeing what the art inside actually looks like. A newer release that I picked up is a stage set for villains. This had the most interesting concept and the most interesting plot twist that I think would have been so cool if the execution was good. However, because I didn't feel for these characters, everything was half-baked. I had more questions than answers for the majority of the book, which I understand now is how you're supposed to sort of feel, is very confused until this big reveal. However, I shouldn't be bored, and I shouldn't not care when the big thing happens. And yet, that's how I ended up feeling. I think a lot of the problems could have been solved if the book had a few more rounds of editing to tighten up the story and the plot, as well as just make us feel more for these characters. I found them all to be copy and paste versions of one another, or just very stereotypical, tropey type of characters. It really was a refreshing, unique YA standalone. However, the execution was just lacking, so a story that had so much potential was instead ultimately a letdown for me, and I did end up giving this book 2.75 as well. Ending things off on a high note, I finally returned to the Veronica Speedwell series and read A Grave Robbery. This is book 9 in the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Raybourn, and I have been kind of like Carl, actually. This was literally at the same time that my Carl binge was happening. I binged through so many volumes of Veronica Speedwell, and then I hit a wall. And then last month I finished A Sinister Revenge, which wasn't really my favorite, but A Grave Robbery, 5 stars. We follow Veronica and Stoker in this historical mystery fiction series, which honestly, you're not really in it for the mystery. You are in it for Veronica and Stoker and their romance and their dynamic, because their banter is absolutely top tier. The more I think about it, the more I'm certain that Veronica and Stoker are both some of my top favorite characters across any series, which is so fun because no matter what they're doing, I'm typically having a pretty good time. In this particular book, we are following them as they are trying to uncover a mystery of a dead body that came into their possession, who it is, what happened to her, how it got to be how it was. It was something that I didn't think that I would enjoy. I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to anything even like remotely creepy or scary. With them visiting graveyards and the book literally being a grave robbery, I wasn't sure if this installment would be one of my favorites, but happy to say that 5 stars for Veronica Speedwell number 9, and I'm so excited yet sad that I'm going to be caught up with the series so shortly, because all that I have left is A Ghastly Catastrophe. And that manages to wrap up all 17 books that I read in the month of April. I think we're gonna bring back the wrap-ups, you guys, because I really enjoyed just yapping to y'all about the books that I read, and it also gives me an excuse to ask you guys what you have read, if you have any of these books on your TBR, or just what you've been up to as well. Please feel free to share. I love talking about books with y'all, and I love, of course, sharing the different events that I do in my life as well. So please feel free to share and chat in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my next one. Toodles!